Hey there, fellow trainers. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your team can't face what lies ahead? Well, today we'll be covering practical cases, where shifts in your roster are required, and how to handle them. Here's how it works. In team building, we have 3 guiding principles, which I will briefly review. Number 1, you need to know your preferred playstyle and play to its strengths. Number 2, you need good type coverage and synergy between the Pokemon on your team. Number 3, every successful team has roles and specializations that are filled by its members. Now, in a Nuzlocke run of a difficulty Rom hack, principles number 2 and 3 still generally apply in every situation, but the main focus lies more on synergy, roles, and specializations. However, because sometimes specific Pokemon require specific answers, you may occasionally be forced to play outside of your preferred style, and so principle number 1 takes a back seat in terms of priority. Hey, I'm just interjecting to remind you that if you're finding this video useful, interesting, or intriguing, smash that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot, and it's completely free. Now, back to the subject at hand. Now, what do I mean by specific answers? Well, these answers can take the form of specific Pokemon with a specific moveset suited to the situation, and sometimes it may even entail complex strategies that involve multiple Pokemon. However, you came here for practical answers, and I'm happy to provide them. Let's use an example from one of the harder ROM hacks, Crystal Kaizo Plus, to illustrate our point. This is Whitney's team in Crystal Kaizo Plus. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can we approach building a team to specifically counter hers? Well, let's dive right into answering that very question. First off, she will always lead with Nidoqueen. So we need to decide what Pokemon we will lead with. In Crystal Kaizo Plus, by this stage of the game, we potentially have access to Nidoqueen answers such as Slowking, Feraligatr, Quagsire, Xatu, and Kingler. However, how do we choose which to open with? Well, we need to look at the rest of her roster and decide whether any of these Pokemon would be better suited to dealing with another of hers first. For instance, Kingler is our best answer to Chansey in this ROM hack. Having extremely high attack and access to submission makes it one of the few Pokemon that can reliably 2-hit KO the Chansey on Whitney's team. So that eliminates him from the options for Nidoqueen. The others don't counter any other Pokemon specifically on her team alone, thus we can begin the process of choosing our answer from these choices. Slowking would require you to evolve your only Slowpoke and lose access to Slowbro, who is far more valuable in the late game by comparison. This is an option that is viable, but it should be our last resort. Xatu is another answer we must consider. While it can 2-shot Nidoqueen with Psybeam, Xatu risks critical hits from Nidoqueen's Ice Punch. Therefore, it forces you to take a gamble to eliminate the Nidoqueen, making it a less than ideal option. Feraligatr can usually 2-shot the Nidoqueen with Bubble Beam. However, he is best swapped out after using Bubble Beam to another Pokemon that can outspeed the Nidoqueen and finish her off. The reason for this is the Aipom and Girafarig. Feraligatr in Crystal Kaizo Plus can know submission at this stage of the game if you delayed the evolution of Croconaw until level 31. Feraligatr and Kingler are both answers to Aipom, and so you want to preserve as much HP on them as you can when dealing with other Pokemon, so that they may switch in safely. Feraligatr also learns Crunch by this point, and is one of the few answers to Girafarig, thus preserving HP is paramount. Unfortunately, this fact also means that using Feraligatr as an answer requires you to dedicate 2 party slots for the Nidoqueen alone, which is hardly efficient, but is still a viable choice. Quagsire, on the other hand, can know Earthquake by this point, in Crystal Kaizo Plus, and can easily tank any of Nidoqueen's attacks. This makes him our ideal answer for the Nidoqueen, and our first slot in the party. Next up is her Chansey. Now we know Kingler is our best option here, but there are 2 other options to consider. Heracross, with sufficient attack and speed DVs, can be an answer to Chansey. However, it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 hits from Rock Smash to finish it off. This isn't the most efficient option as it relies yet again, depending on attack DVs, on a gamble with RNG for the defense drop to allow for a 2-hit KO. The second option can technically be used on any of her Pokemon, but it requires you to sacrifice a Pokemon. This option is a Graveler using Self-Destruct. With sufficient attack DVs, it can pull off a 1-hit KO on any of her Pokemon. However, it goes without saying that Graveler will die after using it. I personally use this strategy to deal with the Miltank in one of my runs, as I lacked the proper answer to it at the time. Sometimes a sacrifice play is your best option, but you should always consider it a last resort. After considering all these options, the ideal choice is still Kingler, as they are the only one available at this point of the game who can reliably 2-shot the Chansey. And so our party at present is Quagsire and Kingler. Moving on to the Aipom. Kabuto is usually the ideal choice, as it has access to submission, a high attack stat, and decent defense. As of now, our team is Quagsire, Kingler, and Kabuto. Next up is the Girafarig. Now, ideally, you would have access to a Forretress at this point to safely deal with it. However, your other options include Feraligatr with Crunch, or a risky play with Heracross using Fury Cutter. Forretress and Feraligatr are the ideal options as they take little risk from the Girafarig, but Heracross can be 2-shot by the Girafarig's Psybeam, thus making it a DV-dependent option and suboptimal. So our party so far is Quagsire, Kingler, Kabuto, and Forretress. Up next is the Clefable. Now most dedicate Quagsire and one other Pokemon to dealing with Clefable. The main risk comes from the secondary effects of Clefable's attacks. It has all 3 elemental punches at its disposal, making it one of the more RNG-based parts of this fight. Ideally, you would open up on it with a Water-type Pokemon such as Feraligatr or Kingler, to bait a Thunder Punch so that you may switch into Quagsire safely. You would then hit Clefable with Earthquake, and swap to Feraligatr or Kingler to finish it off with Submission. Now either of these can work, but I believe Feraligatr is the superior choice, as he will still be at full health at this point, having not been dedicated to taking down any other Pokemon yet, making his switch-in extremely safe. So currently, our team so far is Quagsire, Kingler, Kabuto, Forretress, and Feraligatr. Now for her last Pokemon, the Miltank. The ideal answer is a Togetic with a specific moveset, namely the moveset of Seismic Toss, Encore, Thunder Wave, and Soft Boiled. The strategy is to bait an Earthquake with your Kabuto, to switch into Togetic. This will bait her into using Body Slam or Attract, at which point you will use Thunder Wave. Then you will switch back into Kabuto to bait Earthquake once more, only to switch into Togetic and use Encore, locking them into Earthquake. After that, you merely Seismic Toss the Miltank until it is dead. The only other option is the aforementioned Sacrifice play, and that is always a last resort. I hope this proved helpful to you and gave some insight into team building for a specific encounter. If you found it useful, why not subscribe? And stay tuned for more exciting content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.